that I'm going to do is called Shadow Improvisational Piece. I'm more influenced by, both of my pieces are influenced by old-time radio, which I've been listening to since 1970. And the first one is kind of my influence of The Shadow. The Shadow was a drama that ran on radio from, I want to say, 1931 through about the 50s. Orson Welles was the most famous one, even though he was only on season 1. 5 shadows in total. So it's kind of a, first one's kind of a play on words, word association, that sort of thing. I'll save the Q&A for after the second one. And here's a little thing I can have passed around. It's a Wikipedia thing on the Shadow. And this is called Shadow Improvisational Piece. I have a little shadow that goes in and out with me. And what can be the use of him is more than I can see. He stays so close beside me. He's a coward, you can see. I think shame to stick to Nursey, as that shadow sticks to me. Me and my shadow. We're closer than pages that stick to a book. We're closer than ripples that play in a brook, strolling down the avenue. Wherever you will find him, you'll find me, just look. Closer than a miser, or the bloodhound to Liza's. Me and my shadow. Well, what are you waiting for, Shadow? Why don't you speak? How long did you know I was here in this room, Doctor? For quite some minutes, Shadow. Well, I'm not a master of the art of invisibility. My mind is sensitive to such a force of concentration and exertion to cloak your presence. I see. Since you sent Regal away, it is evident you do not fear me. Fear is a luxury I do not allow myself. Your career of sabotage is over, Dr. Anna. You've been listening to The Shadow, broadcast over many of these mutual broadcasting stations, and be sure to listen next week when you hear The Shadow say, "The weed of crime bears bitter fruit. Crime does not pay. The Shadow knows." Thank you. That's end one. Okay, number two is a radio play, part of a radio play that I'll be using. It's called The Ugliest Man in the World. It was broadcast on NBC March 25th, 1939, part of Arch Oboler's plays. Arch Oboler went later to write scripts for Lights Out, and also did a lot of sci-fi magazines and stuff like that. I'll be accompanied by my other group, the Torque Monks, and I'd like to pass out information on Arch Oboler. Time? It's okay?
You're at 7 minutes before 5 minutes, so you have about 12.
Okay.
That was really confusing.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm setting it so that the thing will go out for 15, so then there's a mandatory like 5 minutes of discussion.
That's so fun.
Yeah. Sorry.
Gun in my hand, in all of my life. I never had a gun in my hand. Smooth gun, hard gun, cold gun in my hand. Bullet won't be cold. Warm bullet, hot bullet, burning the hot as the blood. No, can't think of that lift of the muzzle of the gun. Up hole as black as where I'm going to turn the muzzle up and press the trigger cold against my finger. Cold as death, but life is colder. Rhythm to that. Poet dies. In final rhythm, poet dies who never wrote a poem. Headline for the tabloids. Poet dies with final rhythm. Ugliest man in the world, a suicide. Poet dies with final rhythm. Ugliest man in the world, a suicide. Poet dies in final rhythm. Ugliest man in the world, a suicide. Poet dies in final rhythm. Ugliest man in the world, a suicide. No, stop. Ugliest man in the world, all right, I'll think the thing for the last time. Tear the words around my head over and over the way you've torn for 30 years. Ugliest man in the world, ugliest man in the world, ugliest man in the world. Press the trigger and stop it. Press the trigger. No, I can't. Got to wait. Wait for what? For nothing. If I press the trigger. Nothing if I wait. Press the trigger. No. My chance, yes, my chance to think it all out clearly for the first time in my life, how it started, why it's ending this way. Think it all out clearly from the very start, then press the trigger. There's a start, first day of school. How old was I? 9 or 10? She kept me away from others. I don't know why. Till that day, she said, even before the teacher could answer, Mother hurried out of the room and left me there. The teacher's eyes were on me all. Eyes, worried eyes, thin mouth open, turned to the faces lifting below her. Your attention, children, I want you to meet a new classmate. His name is Paul Martin. For a moment, not a sound on a row of children looking upon me, starting up on me, gaping up at me. And then laughing, and another 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 laughing. I stood there, a little boy, holding down to their twisting mouths, my eyes filled with the sound of them making fun of me. I knew that, but why? Why? Ugliest boy in the world! 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 That's why you kept me away from children. Mother, that's why you kept me away from you. Didn't dare to any longer. Oh, mother, mother, you let others see me. Why didn't you close your hands? Mother, why didn't you close your hands around my neck, put a knife in my heart, drown me, bury me, put away where eyes couldn't see me, eyes couldn't see me, eyes couldn't see me, but you didn't. So this is my boyhood tears, without an end, a boyhood full of tears, boyhood full of tears, boyhood full of tears, boyhood full of tears, boyhood full of tears. I am the ugliest boy in the world, I am the ugliest boy in the world, I am the ugliest boy in the world, I am the ugliest man 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 in the world. Stop! Thank you. Okay, I guess it's Q&A time.
Do you want to give us like kind of a minute or so of influence process and testing?
Well, influences were pretty much, again, mostly radio and just performance art around town and fast cars. Testing. I've, other than doing it, I think what you mean is by a couple of rehearsals. Is that what you mean?
Rehearsals or thinking through your methodology, like how you came to the form that you came to in terms of this presentation.
Okay, well, I guess I only had a couple of rehearsals, but I've been testing it out in my mind for maybe a latter part of a few weeks, and just when everything was up in sync. Because your mind, my mind, I think like most minds maybe perhaps works like a movie, and you're constantly cutting and editing. And so that's how my mind works in that screen, sort of that, I don't know, a screen in my mind, I guess. I don't, I just hope that when I do it, I mean, I'm just constantly doing and going, and I don't really, if it goes well, then it goes well. If it doesn't go well, then I'm okay with it, because that's the way my mind works. It doesn't, I have no sort of boundaries, set rules, or whatever.
How do you differentiate things going well versus not?
Well, if I'm sweating a little bit more than I am, then I realize it's not going well. And this is amateur here. So that's how I measure
So the
it.
sweater meter.
Okay. Bless you.
Do you base that off the audience, or what? How do you mean by sweat? Like,
Well, if the audience is listening, which is always a good thing, because you actually listen, and you weren't texting anybody, that's a good sign. I think that's how I base it. If you're texting and you're bored, I must be doing something wrong.
How do you feel the light influenced this piece? Do you think it conveyed the message better?
I think what I didn't want to do too much was explain things. I just wanted your own minds to try to figure that out. And that's what radio does. And radio, you're supposed to do that. You're supposed to use your mind.
Yeah, but you're using then light as a primary element conveying a radio piece. There has to be some sort of thought process behind it instead of maybe just using the lack of light, which
Like there's a narrative or something that you're seeing
exactly
because you're
with their
showing
outlines.
something, instead of the fact that you're looking at nothing, you're looking at something.
Well,
But you're not looking at a live play, right in front of us either.
Because there was movement,
Yeah, there was-
intentional.
okay.
There's
Well,
definitely
that's well. I guess I put them there as sort of I guess as a visual. I didn't really, I guess when I'm thinking, that's the light that you're seeing is to sort of will help your mind decipher a little bit. As I say, I don't like to explain too much what I'm doing because if I do that, then what do you have to look forward to?
But we could be making all wrong judgments about what you might be trying to convey.
Yeah, I think that's part of this sort of model or this context, the context of critique,
Yeah.
is that this is an audience on one hand, but it's also a reflection, so that you can gather.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Gather additional data, right, to understand what your impact and effect is. Whereas often you can't just ask your audience, like, oh, what did they? In addition, I think one of the things that's really interesting about this sort of setup and your position as performer and writer is that you're very much in the present tense, right? And I think that's, from what you're saying, how you're used to also evaluating how it's going, right? One of the opportunities that you have here, both with this audience, but also with being able to record it, and I think one of the responsibilities now that you are in this context creating images, right, and sequence that go with the performance is that you need to be able to grab the footage off of these cameras, look at it, and also evaluate whether or not these things work. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because they're new elements, and they shape our experience, but you don't get to see that from back there.
No, but that's, you can't be in two places at the same time. That's
Right, but as the designer, writer, maker, by utilizing these technologies, you can, not in performance, but in the evaluation afterwards to set up for the next one. So effectively this becomes a rehearsal, right, and a workshop. And then if you were to mount this, in the for real space of for realness, you would take this information and say, all right, well, maybe the light needs to be a little higher, maybe it needs to be a little lower, maybe I need a light that focuses or doesn't focus, maybe some of the direction on your characters, if the chicken outfit needs to be a little more exaggerated to really get the chickenness of it coming forward. Maybe that's important, but maybe it's not. Do you know what I mean?
yeah, I think.
Yeah, you'll see it when you watch this. Like even if the chicken on the left was just pointed just slightly towards us more, you would have seen her beak a bit more. But those are type of things that it does take a while to tweak, especially with weird angles.
Mm-hmm. But that's part of what you're doing in this sort of piece is you're throwing images up there over time. I thought, for me, we've got 1 minute, so I'm going to just hit pause. One of the things that was really striking image-wise was and it's a little bit cliche, but the lone microphone towards the end. That was like a really nice image. When you were speaking, sometimes it made more sense than other times based on how the shadow was working, but we could also always see your pen light.
Yeah, that was kind of cool.
And that was a little bit distracting. And I think that
I thought it was a brush for a while. I thought you were painting something, to be honest. Because you were right up on it. It seemed as though you were kind of like painting on the surface.
Integrating that into the narrative or figuring out a way, like maybe it's just like taped to your arm. So it's not an extension because we're seeing all
I
this.
just can't see this, and I couldn't see.
No, you can't, but that's why using media, being in a media program and leveraging the ability to reproduce what you're doing gives you those insights so that then you can refine and tweak. The other thing I'll just point out really quickly that I thought was interesting, and then I want to hear last comments, was that with this particular scrim material, there were times when it wasn't like we were just seeing the shadow. You could see beyond the shadow and see the performer. And so as a viewer, I was constantly kind of negotiating, like, does my eye want to think about the form as being the shadow, or do I also want to think about the body behind the shadow? And that was a really nice complementary set of relationships that if you were interested in that, you could heighten those relationships with additional lighting that maybe turns on and turns off depending on what happens, so that we see the person who's acting it out. And given the content, it seems like that might be appropriate. Anybody else? Thoughts, comments, questions?
Yeah, you know, what I really liked most was the narrative, you talking. I thought that was fantastic. And I think that it would have been really effective if somehow you could have incorporated the power that you would come out and you'd get a little quiet at times for it to be your light variant, to dim brighter or quieter as you talk quieter. And then therefore casting the silhouettes. The silhouettes I thought were great, a little static, but I was so drawn to the vocals. I think it would have been really cool to see the vocals dictate the brightness or the fade of the light with the lamp box or something like that.
I enjoyed the whole like having Kellen involved and like no one knowing, and out of nowhere you see her get up and it kind of looks
I
like.
didn't even know it was starting.
Oh. Okay. Well, it just looked like it was like you were trying to get a new space, and before you know it, like you're in the piece. And then also, I don't know if anybody else noticed this, but right like towards the end when you go in, it looked like the screen was like about to fall down.
Yeah.
And like that was like
That would have been
That was like the sheer force of your voice knocked it out. It was weird. But like a good
That's how you produce tension. You have your set on.
You know what? That's the thing. That's the problem with live performance. You never know what's going to happen. That's the beauty of it.
I felt so sad for that little boy.
I really enjoyed how quickly and easily it was to disfigure your shadow from subtle movements forward and backward, like from a very crisp picture of yourself to this, giant whatever. That might be a fun thing to play with, rather than, as Tom was talking about, the possibility of incorporating brighter and lesser lights with the disfiguring of your shadow.
Yeah, it's interesting because depending on the angle of the light, you could probably make your shadow appear very small, like a small figure, and then transform it into a big elongated figure, which would potentially add to drama.
The variations in the clarity of the image because of the distance from the light. I think part of why that moment when it was just the microphone was surprisingly effective was because it was such a sort of clear, crisp, iconic image in contrast to the sort of moving, not quite in focus shadows of the people. And so playing with that with greater intentionality, I think would be exciting. And also too, the fact that when you're given a very simple image to engage with, I think that actually can help your audience focus on the vocals in a way that it actually makes you pay more attention than you would if you were listening to the radio. It's like how when people would gather around the radio and listen to the shadow, they would look at the radio.
Right.
Because having something sort of static to look at helps you. So I found myself listening the most intently when there was a really clear image.
I was really excited with you experimenting with something other than us and around kind of watching your performers, because I think that doing stuff like this can start getting you to be narrative, but in a different way than a band, And I think that was pretty exciting. And I think if with your script, you have a very strict script. So maybe if you had strict images like that microphone that you would hit on point, kind of like a storyboard or something. I think that would really help the effectiveness of this playful kind of direction.
Cool. I'm gonna have to call it there because we're a bit over.
I wanted to just thank everybody for their remarks. It'll help me. I can be just like you someday.
Thank you. And that's great that you're able to get your helpers come in too. I think that's I'm definitely honored that people would take the time out